Hey folks, welcome to Discussions with Dr. G. Today, we're cracking open the mysterious and honestly sometimes headache-inducing world of immunomodulators. If you're picturing a bunch of moody medications that either amp up or slam the brakes on your immune system, you're exactly right. Basically, immunomodulators are drugs that tweak the immune response. It could mean from anything from suppressing it down for things like autoimmune diseases or boosting it up, like in some cases for cancers and other rare scenarios. These are an absolute game changer for autoimmune disorders, allergies, preventing organ transplant rejection, and treating certain immune deficiencies. But let me tell you, as useful as they are, these drugs do not play around. They are a high-risk club. Any RN worth their salt knows that means extra vigilance, hella careful assessments, and clear conversations with our patients. I mean, take it from someone who teaches this stuff to wide-eyed nursing grads. You can't just toss immunomodulators at a patient and walk away. Every dose is like a tiny negotiation between risk and benefit. So today, we're driving into why these meds matter so much in patient care, the kind of problems they solve, and why careful nursing practice can literally make or break outcomes. Before we get too deep into the med-surg weeds, let's zoom out a bit and talk about immunology itself. Remember, your immune system's whole job is kind of like airport security. It's got to recognize self versus non-self. Normal cells get to keep on boarding with their coffee, but anything suspicious like bacteria or viruses is supposed to get flagged. When that goes sideways and the system loses self-tolerance, you get autoimmune disease, where your body goes after itself like it's on a seek and destroy mission. Now, immunity's got layers. Innate immunity is your body's default setting, basically that first gut reaction. Quick, but not super specific. Then you have adaptive immunity, which is like the elite task force. Slower to react, but it remembers everything for you for the next time and gets real personal with those antigens. Got T cells, B cells, all doing their thing. T cells, y'all should remember those CD4 helper dudes and CD8 cytotoxic ones. And these almost mythical regulatory T cells, these meds often target one or more of these groups, so it's essential to understand what's going on under the hood. Actually, let me go off script for a second. My first clinical encounter with autoimmune diseases was a patient who totally couldn't grasp why her own body was attacking itself. It was so hard explaining, hey, sometimes your immune system gets confused and doesn't realize those are your own joints it's munching on. It's wild, but that's what makes this important for nurses to know and understand. Knowing that immunomodulators are targeting very specific immune actors or chemical signals. That's your shortcut to predicting what could go wrong and what to keep an eye out for. All right, so let's roll up our sleeves, break down the immunomodulator ecosystem. At the top level, you'll hear about immunosuppressants. These knock the immune system down a peg for stuff like lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, or transplant folks so they don't reject their new kidney or whatever. Then you have immunostimulants, which honestly don't come up as often, but their whole purpose is to crank up the immune response. Next up, medication classes you're definitely going to see on the floor. Your antihistamines, first and foremost. Those are your first responders for allergies, hives, that kind of stuff. They basically block histamine, but the kicker is sedation, especially those old school first generations like diphenhydramine. If your patient's falling asleep mid-conversation, now you know why. Then you have corticosteroids. These are like the sledgehammers of the immune suppression and inflammation control system. They are amazing for asthma or autoimmune flares, but man, you've got to be on your game. Hyperglycemia, infection, osteoporosis, insomnia, those are your main characters for side effects. And never, ever abruptly stop corticosteroids unless you want to risk for adrenal crisis. Seriously bad news. Now, we can't forget calcineurin inhibitors. Think cyclosporin. This is a fancy way of saying that they stop T cells from becoming activated. This is critical for transplant patients and sometimes for autoimmune diseases. But here's where nurses shine. Monitoring for kidney damage, blood pressure, drug levels, and any sign of infection. If you're not checking those, you are definitely playing with fire. You basically have to watch these like a hawk and teach your patients to keep an eye on these too. All right, so let's shift to the new schools. Biologics and these different flavors of DMARDs or DMARDs, which stands for disease-modifying anti-rheumatic drugs, DMARDs. The names get so long you start missing simple drug names like Tylenol after a while, but here we go. Biologics are often monoclonal antibodies or fusion proteins, meaning they are freakishly targeted. These can block very specific immune system signals, like certain cytokines or receptors. Major upside is they can actually slow down the underlying disease process versus just masking the symptoms. Here's the problem. If you block part of the immune system, surprise, surprise, infections start knocking at your door. That's why before you even start a patient on these, you have to screen for tuberculosis, hepatitis, all that nasty stuff. Then you have to constantly monitor CBC, liver enzymes, rinse and repeat, CBC, liver enzymes. Get the idea? And for DMARDs, you've got the classics, methotrexate and friends. And the new targeted ones like tofacitinib. I once had a patient so freaked out about starting a biologic because they'd read horror stories about infection risk. We ended up having a heart-to-heart about balancing disease progression with infection risk and how we were going to screen, monitor, and catch these things early. Sometimes you got to be partners, part therapist, and part mythbuster. So, to sum it up, these meds are great for slowing down diseases like rheumatoid arthritis or lupus, but the monitoring is relentless. Watch their labs, reinforce how benefits can take weeks, and drive home the infection prevention points. Oh, and contraception counseling. Don't gloss over that if it's indicated. So, how do we actually put all the science to work on the ground? It's all about using that nursing judgment. Shout out to anyone prepping for NCLEX because this is textbook stuff. First, you constantly screen or scan for cues. Weird fevers, sore throats, sudden bruising, abnormal labs, any signs of infections or side effects. Next, analyze those cues. Is the medication working or is this disease getting worse? It's not always an either or, by the way. When it comes to priorities, infection risk is number one, hands down. Sometimes we have to decide, do I hold this med and call the doc about new symptoms or off-the-wall labs, or can we keep going? And there's no shame in saying, I'm not totally sure, but something feels off. Collaboration saves lives. I will tell you, teach your patients to report any fever, sore throat, fatigue, bruising, or cuts that just don't heal. Absolutely avoid live vaccines unless there's an explicit green light from your provider, and never underestimate the stubbornness of a patient who feels better but stops their medication. Adherence, lab follow-up, and patient safety education, that is in fact your job. Quick real-life scenario for you. Patient comes in with a neutrophil count below normal limits. They look sick but can't put a finger on it. Hold the med, call the provider, and get those cultures started. Don't be a hero. Teamwork and quick action will save lives. This also keeps your patients safe. All right, that's my whirlwind tour of immunomodulator nursing. Stick with me for more pharmacology deep dives, and trust me, it only gets weirder and more interesting from here. Catch you next time.